This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you live and around the world from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV, and our radio website where you can listen to the X-Zone 7/24/365, as well as the live show Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight, www.xzoneradiotv.com. X-Zone Nation, my guest this hour is Monica Guerrero, and she comes from a long line of artists and intuitives dating back many generations. In fact, her grandfather was the inventor of the produce bag closure tab. Now, she has come to realize that spirit and creativity are both a reflection of love and light, and are available for all of us to tap into at any time for clarification, connection, and profound healing. Spirit and science are one and the same, infinite knowledge, eternally evolving and growing. Joining me now is Monica Guerrero. And Monica, welcome to the X-Zone.
Hi, Rob. So nice to be here.
Nice having you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our great pleasure, Monica. So tell us, how did you get started on this dual path that you're on? One as a very talented artist and one as a very sensitive intuitive.
Well, it's interesting because I see those paths as both very much the same. Mm-hmm. When you're involved in the creative process, you are reaching out to the infinite and you are channeling information, and people don't always recognize it as such.
Right.
But it's definitely tapping into something that's greater than ourselves, and that's where the space where you lose ego and where information lies. And so I found that I actually go into, when I go to do a reading or when I go to do a sculpture, I step into that same place. It's just that same way of being. I don't know if I would say it's a trance, or I'm sure there are probably different names for it, but it's a clearance. It's a removal of self, really, where spirit lies.
Would you say that it also has something to do with meditation and what effect meditation has on people? Because I know that before coming on the show tonight, according to one of my producers, that you went into meditation.
Yes, it definitely is one and the same. And I think that just like you go through different states of being during the day, through the evening, you're in all different states. Sometimes that can just happen naturally where you're in that state. But for me, if I have a story around something, then I like to go into a deep meditation because it can help remove the ego around it. So, for example, for coming on the show today,
right,
the stories were coming up around listening and more people, da-da-da-da-da. And so it was really important that I sit and remove that and just be in present mode, be in truly available for spirit and listening. And and walking in faith really is trusting what comes in is where you're meant to be. How I was guided to your show.
What has been your most memorable experience being an intuitive?
Well, so as an artist, there is also the very logical side of me. And so I analyze quite a bit. And if I'm doing a project, there's that balance of letting go and letting it flow in and then stepping back and analyze. You know, you go in those different states. And so many years ago, I was forced to take a look at that analytical side of myself with an experience that I had with my father. And I really think this was what cracked open a lot for me. My father had passed, and it had been, at the time, we were trying to get into his computer, and there were some blocks and locks and things. He was self-taught, and he had some kind of interesting security codes that were put on there. And so it was a funny thing. It was just how my dad was. And so we put the computer that he had aside for a number of years, and we decided, my brother-in-law, he had been going into, he had been self-taught as well, and he decided that he was going to give a look at the computer and see if he could kind of work around the blocks that were in there. And I was spending the day with my sister-in-law, and it took him all day. He actually had to, there was a wire that burnt out, and this was a number of years ago. So he had to do quite a bit to get it back up and running to work around it. So Mike, who was a very factual guy, I'll never forget, he walked out into the room where Debbie and I were talking, and he said, he kind of looked at her. He was very pale, and he looked at her, and he said, and he looked at me, and I said, it's okay. It's okay. I can handle it. So we went into the kitchen on the table where the computer was, and we looked at the screen, and at the time it was one of the black screens. It was just with the green characters.
Yeah, the monochrome.
And yeah, exactly. And so all that was on the screen, and I remember it verbatim because it was just so powerful. It said, Pollyanna, goodbye and good luck. Love, Dad. In parentheses, it said Mav, which was short for Maverick. And so Mike said to me, so who's Maverick and who's Pollyanna? So I have a brother and sister. At the time, they were just starting dial-up. They had it going on with the library. It was just the very beginnings of it. And so somehow he had managed to talk once or twice with my sister over the dial-up. And so I say this because Pollyanna was me, and Maverick was my father's. It was his CB handle. We had talked, a few times over the CB, but the chances of the message going to me, so my logical mind is trying to rationalize how it's been 3 years since my dad passed. It wouldn't have been due to the fact that Mike had replaced the cable and kept going and going for me to get this message. So I'm trying to figure out what are the odds that it would come to me. And the more I threw my rational mind at it, the more it just didn't make any sense of why I was receiving that message. And I remember Debbie coming out from the other room with a video camera, taking a picture of the screen with the video, and it was just really amazing. But that was the beginning of a real deep questioning of what this life really looked like, and that there were other possibilities. And that was just a cracking open. He has communicated with me on many occasions now through technology. And technology was his form and his way. And so I found that people will communicate in very much the way that was their modality, and maybe a shared modality that they experienced together. Like as an artist, I receive messages that come in symbols and pictures and things like that. Whereas someone else, maybe if they're more formally religious or specific religion, maybe they'll come across information that has to do with that in whatever way they can relate. So technology has been big for me from that point on, too.
So what does your dad say it's like on the other side? What happens when we transcend from this side to the next side? What's it like wherever he is?
Well, one of the things that's interesting that the messages that have come in from my dad, I actually had an intuitive speak to me about the messages that my dad was sending in these signals.
Mm-hmm.
She felt that he was specifically sending me codes, which was a way that makes sense for me. And I think that ultimately there is an infinite nature that is something that we need to tap into. I think that we are tapping into more and more. I think that's, part of the reason why you're doing this show here and just helping people to see different perspectives. I come from the place of peace, to find the peaceful perspective. But that's what I do with art as well.
Right.
And so I really feel like that's the message. For example, when people go to do a reading, some people cleanse or they clear or whatever they do. And for me, it's finding a place of gratitude. It's very simple. It's gratitude in the moment and brings me into present, and being present is infinitely connected. So as far as his messages of what the other side's like, I feel like that it's infinite. He felt in this space very confined, and so I feel that he transitioned in order to be able to experience that on a level that was more expansive. But we don't have to leave the body to experience that expansiveness, and I feel like that's the message that I've really been getting.
So what would we need to do to feel that expansive?
To experience alternate perspectives, to investigate what it is that our beliefs are, and to sit with them and to take time. And in meditation, it can look any way, but if we have beliefs that are painful or limiting, I actually had an artist that was very impactful, and he was very influential on me in regard to art, but it's in regard to spirit as well. He did a sculpture that was what looked like a tangled mass of wires, and it just looked like a jumble. And I remember being so nervous. This was when I was younger. I did an interview on him when I was in high school. And my heart started racing, and I said, oh, my gosh, I don't know. Is that art? Or just all these things came up. And he said, no. He said, Gil, come over here. And so there was one wire sticking out from the sculpture, just straight out, and then there was a little hoop on the end of it. And when I bent down and I looked through the wire, there was an amazing, perfect rendition in wire of Einstein. What he had done is he had taken all the wires, and only from one perspective could you see Einstein. And to me, it just said so much. I've carried that through in my life.
Wow.
It helped me to understand that if I see something and I experience something, and someone else doesn't see it from that exact same perspective, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that it isn't true or real. It just means that it took exactly the light hitting it just right, or it's just very personal. It's a very personal experience. And so if I start to get locked into a single perspective, and I think that skeptics can get locked into that perspective as well as people who maybe would be fraudulent in regards to gifts. I think there's all ends of the spectrum where people can manipulate it. But I think that the truth is from where you stand, and to remember that when that keeps you present and it keeps you connected. So perspective is really important to shift and to look at and listen to what other people's, where they stand. And I like to, for example, the artist, his name was Dennis Patton. He's still a working artist. He brought me over to that perspective. He literally brought me down to the angle that I could understand his work. And somebody could have been looking off to the side, and I say, look, it's Einstein. And they say, you are crazy. And from their perspective, I am crazy. And so I validate that that's, if someone doesn't recognize my gifts or abilities, or they're afraid, or they're just, they maybe literally call me crazy, I understand that, because I understand what it's like to not have experienced the angle the things that I've been through, and to know what that's like.
That's true. It all depends on how you look at things.
Yeah.
Clarity.
Yeah.
Tell me, I understand that you have interest in the crystal skulls.
Yeah, I actually had an experience. It's funny because all these synchronistic moments in my life, they kept happening again and again, and eventually I started to just kind of connect the dots and line up that these are not all coincidences. So I grew up in Marin, in Terra Linda specifically, which was about 5 minutes from George Lucas's ranch, and so that's kind of part of my influence as far as art and creativity go. And so Lucas was very influential on my childhood. And so we would always, watch the Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and so at the time when there was the movie, the Crystal Skulls, the Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skulls movie came out, I was working in the industry. So I worked in the industry doing casting and molding and finishing and things, and messages kept coming in about the Crystal Skulls. I found out what they were. I hadn't heard of them, and they just were these synchronistic messages. And why did these crystal skulls keep coming in? And I had this was really a strong part in my awakening, where so much was coming in, where I started to think, I really don't know if I'm going crazy here myself. I was doubting my sanity, and to the point where I thought, if all of this is happening that's so synchronistic, and is it me? Am I just creating this reality? And of course, if you're in a dream, you think, oh, of course, I created that dream. And then you wake up and go, oh, well, yeah, it was my dream. That's why it all lined up. So it got so synchronistic that I started to wonder what was going on. And so the crystal skulls, I contacted a man. He came in. I don't even know how I got his information, but and I just felt compelled to call him with some information that came to me about the crystal skulls. And it was that was my diving off point. It was just, I just can't go on caring so much about what other people think that I can't make phone calls or do whatever spirit calls me to do anymore. And so I called him and I told him that I felt like these skulls were not only holding information, as crystals do, crystal radios amplify radio waves and things, and but that they're actually live streaming information from other dimensions, from other realms of spirit. And he was, I could hear him in the background. He's not only was he not calling me crazy, but he's furiously jotting these notes. And I've talked to him every so often now, and he just was really pivotal in acknowledging my gifts and the information that was coming into me. And so the reason that I mentioned the Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skulls, at the time I was working with another artist who was very much mathematically based in his abilities. So he, very measures and points and things like
Right.
that. And so I was sharing with him the synchronistic experiences that I was having. And I remember telling him, he said, oh, this is, baloney. And then I said, no, I'm not making any claims. I'm just telling you what in truth has happened. And so I'm kind of working it out with him. And I said, I'm just saying, how many times can you experience these things where it becomes a new form of denial that you're not acknowledging that there's some correlation or some connection, and it's not all purely coincidence. And so it was amazing, because at the time this was around the time that the Indiana Jones movie came out. Now, I had seen it, and it was Indiana Jones, and Harrison Ford was doing this new Indiana Jones movie. That's about all I knew of it. I don't know if the Crystal Skull thing came out. I just remember we had to go. I got all these little spoons for my friends and their kids, and I mean, we made a whole thing of it. We had a portion of the theater was just all of us going to this movie. So I was telling him about it and at work, and one of the guys who was another freelance artist that we worked with, he came up that same day, within the day of having that conversation. He says how he had worked on the skull, on making the actual skull for the Indiana Jones movie, and what it looked like before, and how they put their movie effects on it and make it super cool. And it was like, and I just remember looking at my coworker and friend and saying, nothing. I just, what can you say about that? Here we've been having conversations about all the synchronicities and all the coincidences, and that hasn't been the first. I then went to visit one of the crystal skulls in when it was in Ojai, California, and that was Max, and connected with the owner of that and shared some information. I hadn't actually planned on going into the event, but shared with someone on the outside of the door that there's some information that I wanted to convey to her, and so they allowed me to come in and resonated with the information.
So what kind of information do you get from the skulls?
So I feel like the skulls are just a tool. I do feel like we are on the brink of recognizing, though, that there is, so as far as electricity, we see that now we know that electricity is in the air, and we see that there's wireless technology. But what we haven't made the connection as far as in the mainstream is that thought is wireless as well. And we haven't quite made the, now, as far as I'm aware, I really actually believe that there are probably, this is something that there is government information on, that that is just something that I'm not aware of or many of us aren't aware of in the mainstream. But as far as the mainstream goes,
can you explain that? Can you explain that further? Because it just didn't make any sense when you said it about the government and so on. Could you clarify that?
Sure. Yes, I feel that there are tools that are capable of very clearly receiving messages from spirit, either in body. So when I say spirit, that can mean spirit in another dimension, or it can mean spirit to spirit, spirit within the body itself. We can transmit and receive information telepathically. I believe that there are devices that are capable of facilitating that in not only in body but with other dimensions that provide very clear information. And I think that that's something that right now there are more and more people that are becoming open to their intuitive abilities, to clairvoyance, to mediumship, clairaudience, whatever it is, that you yourself, I feel, have, which was coming to me before, which is why you understood and selected me as part of your show tonight. I feel that that's a gift. And I don't know if that's something that you've discussed, if I'm outing you, which people have done to me. But I feel that more and more people are definitely coming to those gifts and abilities. And that is, that's part of that infinite. There's peace in that. There's peace in that for the world. And as old as time, man has been trying to control that and to manipulated, and it's just getting to the point where it's so rapidly escalating that there will be no capability to control it any longer, is what I feel.
So you feel that this information is being suppressed?
Yes, I think it's been, yes, I absolutely do. And actually, I think that a lot of the parallel between artists that I've experienced in having many, many circles of artist friends and musicians and all forms is a truth teller, a truth seeker. And that's where that infinite lies, in the present and the reality of things. And so I think that any truth seeker does take a risk in the physical body, with the energy in this place that wants to dominate. And that's ego-driven, that wants to say, no, you need to look at things through our lens, through our eyes and our perspective. And that kind of, in tying it back to the sculpture, for example, is, no, that is a jumble of wire. I don't see that. I refuse to see it. And so you need to see it my way when I say it's a jumble of wire. And I don't care if you say that I see Einstein right here. I won't come around to your perspective. Not only that, but you could possibly be either ostracized or be murdered for revealing what you see as the truth if it conflicts with my sustenance here on Earth, which can be fear-driven, that suppression, or it can be money-driven, which fear and money often can go hand in hand. So that would be what would lead to that need for a want for suppression.
All right, Monica, you and I have to take a commercial break here at the bottom of the hour. Please stand by. By the way, Monica, what's the website our listeners can go visit you at?
It's real easy. It's just monicatoday.com.
There you go, monicatoday.com. And Monica and I will be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV, and our radio site where you can listen to the X Zone 24/7, 365, as well as during the week, Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. until midnight, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My name's Rob McConnell, and I will be back on the other side of this break as we continue investigating the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology from right here in our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Began to demonstrate a metaphysical connection to the spirit world as a little girl. Her family noticed the connection, but it was a great-grandmother who told the family that Linnea was indeed gifted. The great-grandmother, who was also gifted, felt that Linnea had indeed inherited these attributes. It has been noticed that oftentimes such things are passed down through the generations. Linnea was also born with a caul, a thin white membrane across a newborn's face. Legend has it that if the baby is born with this caul, the child will have second sight, or what we call psychic abilities. Linnea Starr does past, present, and future, and has the gift of prophecy. It is written within scriptures that if you are able to give factual information, and prophecies indeed come true, the gift indeed comes from the divine realm. Linnea Starr does large interactive groups as well as private gatherings. For more information on Linnea Starr or to contact Linnea for a one-on-one consultation, visit her website at www.linneastar.com. That's www.linneastar.com. What if Jesus came back now and insisted that we listen to him? How would the world be different if Christians really followed the Gospels? For 2,000 years, we've been practicing a religion. Now it's finally time to get it right. Read Liberating Jesus, new from Roberta Grimes. Meet the Jesus you never knew. Roberta uses afterlife evidence and biblical analysis to prove that Jesus is exactly right. Learning the lessons that he came to teach is the reason we are born at all. Roberta says he has come back now to insist that we actually listen to him so we can begin to use his teachings to unite and transform the world. Liberating Jesus wherever books are sold. Jesus has the answers, and it's not too late. Roberta blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Good real estate websites are not just about showing listings, but offering visitors valuable information about neighborhoods, market statistics, tips, and personal insights. Luckily, you will find that on Roost, but you won't on many other real estate websites in Budapest. That's why we created Roost. Roost is a website with tailored results for the foreign investor, curated by Hungarian-loving expats who found their home abroad and decided to roost in Budapest. Let Roost help you get started on the right foot. Whether you intend to live, work, play, retire, or simply invest abroad, Roost offers all types of properties in Budapest, from affordable studios to luxury homes. From neighborhood insights like where to grab a great coffee or how to buy property, our team of local experts can answer your questions and speak to the direct concerns of a foreign investor. Buying foreign property is an exciting and complex adventure. It can also be very time-consuming and costly if you don't have the best information and resources at hand. Roost provides professional real estate services and assistance to an international clientele of foreign property investors and rental apartment owners in Budapest. For more information on Roost, visit their website at www.roost.co. That's www.rooste.co. You're a pumpkin.
I was a pumpkin, a big orange pumpkin.
A big orange pumpkin. And were there a lot of children out there?
Not so much.
No? Did you get a lot of candy?
Yeah, I got a lot of candy. Mommy's eating all the chocolate bars.
Well, tell Mommy that's your candy, honey.
Okay.
Tell her.
Stop eating all my chocolate bars, Mommy. Daddy's sick.
Monica Guerrero is our special guest of this hour, X-Zone Nation. MonicaToday.com is the website. And Monica, I also understand that you've studied or you have an interest with Tesla technology.
I'm actually, yes, I'm doing little doodles. I have a notepad that I do doodles as I do readings, and so in our conversation here, I'm doing a doodle, and I have Nikola Tesla, and I'm doing a little circle around it right now as you say that. So, yes, and so this was part of the realizing for me that there was some suppression of information. So some years back, really a lot around the time frame. It's interesting how Spirit will escalate information when it's time for you to have awareness. So I had what I call those dreams. I was realizing there was definitely a difference between a certain type of dream that was kind of just processing stuff throughout the day dream, and then a dream that was more of an intuitive type of dream. And so the dream that I had, I was I was lifted off the ground. I was in some sort of, it was a bubble, a clear bubble, and there was a device on the floor of this bubble, and it was this metal box. And I knew that I would experience moving forward, and I would move forward in this vehicle. And it was very different than any kind of other experience that I'd had, because it wasn't just I was thinking move forward. It was actually emotion. It was an emotionally driven craft. And I knew that there were towers. I specifically saw in this dream, or had awareness that there were these towers, and this craft was elevated between these towers. So somehow there was a like a mental connection to these towers, and the mental drove and rose the vehicles. So it was definitely a very fluid and holistic type emotional. We were integrated. That's the word I'm looking for. We were integrated into these crafts. I was in the dream. So when I woke up, I was sharing, and I knew it was one of those dreams. And so I was going online and looking up anti-gravity, and this man came up, Nikola Tesla. At the time, I had no idea who he was. To think now that I was in my 30s and I had no idea who Nikola Tesla was. I'd never heard about him my whole life. I hadn't learned about him in school books. And then the more I looked into it and the more research I did, I realized that this man was the basis for so much of our technology. And first I was shocked that I didn't know who he was, that I wasn't taught about him in school, that I'd heard of Edison, but I hadn't heard of Nikola Tesla. I'd heard of Einstein, but not Tesla. And so then I just kept looking more into what is this dream all about. And I'll never forget the first time I saw a photo of him just on the screen, and his eyes, just his arms were crossed, and they just pierced mine. And I just knew that this spiritual path had something to do with revealing the relationship between spirit and technology, and freeing ourselves from the confines of what we have, from the perception that we are confined. And when I found out that he has, his ideas about free energy, and that we are wireless. And the more I researched it, I found out that later in life, he had some theories. As you said, my grandfather was the inventor of the bread tab. And so the reason that was the case was because he thought about things differently. Anything, he would pick up a little scrap of trash. He taught my mom to think the same way. My mom taught me to think that same way. That was passed down, that way of thinking. And so when I learned about Tesla and how he visualized these things in his mind in very clear detail, I related to him. It was like I was meeting a long lost relative, or just that there was this kindred spirit. But then when I learned that the attempts to suppress the information, and then the worst case that he was actually Edison literally tried to discredit and his work, and yet still at the end of his life he recognized that it was his connection with spirit, with animals. It was, I guess, pigeons. He had at the end of his life he realized that was a beautiful thing as well, connecting with spirit. And I love the simplicity of that. And just but I do feel that that is part of my calling, to talk to people that maybe have some pieces of a puzzle, and relay any information. I feel like I've channeled information from him, that I'm available for that. And I don't exactly even know all that will come out of it, because I'm looking forward to talking to maybe engineers or people that have more of a science background, because I can channel pictures or numbers or things, but I don't know exactly how to translate that. I don't have that scientific background. as much as artists have engineering abilities and things like that. The mathematical part is more foreign to me.
Well, wouldn't you be able to channel the information from Tesla himself to explain these diagrams to you so you could understand it?
It's possible. I may get to that point where I can do that. But I do feel like channeling can definitely be a collaborative endeavor as well. And actually, it's interesting because a lot of my channeling, I do sit down and very direct information channeling. But a lot of it looks like you were supposed to meet this person because they have this information. It's almost like going around and collecting little locks, keys for certain locks, and it seems to be more collective. That's what my path seems to be, connecting the right people to receive the information. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that is and how that unfolds. Maybe I'm supposed to receive it bit at a time, as I have been.
So what have you been able to do with the information so far that you've channeled?
Well, one of the things that I think that is in that dream, especially, that correlation between the role of emotions and how we can, when we tap into emotions, there's so much that we are capable of, and that we can actually use that to as a resource. So many, there's abuse. I say that abuse is when you go to one single resource because you believe in your perception that it's the only alternative that you have, and you just keep hitting that same resource. And that can mean, abuse of the environment. It can be abuse, whether it can be shopping or it can be smoking. It's when you go to that same source because it's what you believe as the only answer.
So what is wrong about that? What's wrong with that? Because many, many great authors, musicians, scientists have gone back to the drawing board, to where they feel that this is where the answer is, and they have solved the problem that has brought them to great prominence. So what is wrong with that?
I agree. I have a friend who says that, wouldn't you want an OCD brain surgeon? And I love that, because as far as the judgment on it, it's hard to judge that. I mean, you can even say abuse could get you to abuse can bring awareness. So, not to say that there's anything wrong with that necessarily, but if it's within the confines of the human body, we can only handle so much within this body. And that may be okay too. If you're really, really comfortable with knowing that when it's your time to transition, you just settle right into that, that's great. That's faith right there. I mean, you can tap in, and some people, we have a friend that recently passed, and he was a daredevil. I mean, he lived his whole life on the edge, and that's great. But he knew that was his way to live, and he was very okay about going out that way. He expressed that verbally in this lifetime. And so I certainly think that that's a way to go. But if you're wanting to maintain in the body for a longer period of time, it's something to consider. But yeah, I mean, even with the environment, I mean, we could say, hey, if it gets used up or whatever it is, that we're just transitioning to something that's planetless or in the body, bodiless.
But what happens
I agree with you.
What happens if there is nothing else out there? Like, there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of theories. There are a lot of people who bring forward hypotheses. What happens if they're all wrong, and that what you see right now is all that there is?
What you see right now is all that there is.
All right, so how can there be anything else?
So if you're looking at this very moment, because that will change from second to second. That's why I call myself Monica today. It could be Monica in this very moment, because the only truth that exists is in this very moment. The tide comes and it washes the shore. and it changes the absolute structure of the shore from moment to moment. So the only truth lies in the very moment that we're present in, and everything else.
I understand that. That's beautifully and very philosophical. But let's get our feet back on the ground and talk realistically. You were saying that you were able to channel. Now, if you're able to channel, there must be something more based on your belief. But what happens?
I've experienced that there is.
All right, you've experienced, but how do we know the experience is not a manifestation of your dreams and your desires, that it has nothing to do with the connection with another realm, another dimension, another reality? What happens if this connection is solely within you?
It might be. I mean, to be totally honest, but don't think I don't have those moments where I think, well, this could be a fabrication. This whole life could be a fabrication of. I mean. Oh,
I don't think life is a fabrication. I certainly do not believe that life is a fabrication. I've had some guests on the show who say, well, this is basically an image, this isn't reality. Yeah, fine. Try telling that. Yeah, try telling that to the people that you owe money to, or the bank for your mortgage, or the payments for your car. They're going to look at you as if you have three heads. I think what's happened in this space and time that we're in, that people can't accept reality. They can't accept the notion, the fact that the conditions that we find ourselves in, the mess we find our planet in, is because we are part of what caused it. Now, you've got the majority of people who stick their heads in the sand and put their butts up in the air, who are just waiting for the second coming of Christ, or they're just waiting for extraterrestrials from another planet to solve all these problems. They're the same people who also believe that the world is coming to an end because, hey, if the world ends, I don't have to worry about anything. These are the people who I feel very, very sad for because they can't grasp reality. These are the same people who spend hours and hours in front of video games, or they have no concept of reality. So I don't believe that this reality that you and I are in right now, as well as all the other people in the world, this is not a fictitious existence. This is not a hologram. This is not a play that we are embodying ourselves in, and we are somewhere else in another part of a universe or another dimension, enjoying the experience that this person called Rob, or this person that Monica is going through.
Well, and I in this body, I choose accountability.
Right.
And so it doesn't mean, and I see in the same perspective that you do on that. And I choose accountability. And so that's why when I say, if someone says, do you this or that for the future, let's say, do you think that, and I say, I don't know. I choose to be honest about it. Honest in that I experienced this.
Right.
Honest in a holistic look of the world, and say, well, I love science. And so I see that spirit and science are one and the same.
Right.
I love science, so I embrace this follows this follows that, and so that is, and that comes down to throwing that bottle in the trash can when we don't have recycling in the area where I live, and throwing it in a bag, and every little step like that. And so that's for me, though. And so I have to keep bringing it back to my own accountability, because I do feel I see the effect, and I choose to look at the effect and the impact that we do have on one another and on our planet. And even though I may see things from a different perspective as either as an artist or a medium or in all ways, it's so important to me that if I want something to change, or I want something to remain intact that I love trees. And so I will have conversations about what I do. And maybe I'll be inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather be inspiring through my actions and my behavior. And that's more likely to bring about the change than to, and it's very easy to do, to step into judgment. But when I come back to clarity, I come back to myself. What is it that I'm doing? What is it that I'm not doing? And that's where I just hope that's the faith, that I can live as an inspiration, and hope that in my actions and activities that I do, that people see, hey, I see that that's something that Monica's experienced and she's acknowledged. And when I shared, for example, about being a medium, it's a transition to share on Facebook and different groups and friends and say, hey, we've known Monica as the multimedia artist. We've seen her shows her outfits on the runway. We've heard her sing and all these artistic things. And now she's a medium. But that's for me to honor my truth. That's for me to honor what I've experienced. And if people aren't on that same page, it's not right for me to not live my truth because they don't understand or they don't live theirs.
You know, a very long time ago, a very smart and wise man said, "To thine own self be true."
Yeah.
You have to live with yourself.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of truth in the old sayings. I think the further we progress with technology, the dumber we get. The lazier we get.
You know, it's interesting because I think that technology is like a sword. You can create with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a knife. I'm kind of thinking like I like to carve, and so we're whittling. Are we whittling or are we stabbing? And so that's it's like any other tool. What I like about technology is what I think a lot of people like is that we realize we're not alone, that we are interconnected, and that's the level. It's actually brought it up a notch for us to realize that it's just getting more and more rapid, that we're able to know that we're all interconnected.
That's right.
And my hope is that the more we realize that we are interconnected, that we will have more peace. I mean, some people could kill their brother.
Sure.
But if they could see things from their brother's perspective, they would be less likely to. And technology helps us to realize that much more, how we have an effect. I mean, I can put a post out and it can go viral.
Hey, Monica, speaking about posts, our time is up for tonight. I want to thank you so much for joining us. Take care of yourself. And Exo Nation, if you'd like to find out more about Monica, visit her online at monicatoday.com. I'll be back on the other side of this break with the news as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away.